Scott Hambrick, scotthambrick.com. Welcome to my little show. Friend of the show, Peter, sent me a number of questions, and I thought they were all good questions, and they were all things that I was interested in. Virtually all of them are things that I'm interested in talking about. So I thought I would start working down through his list. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Peter, for sending these in. He sent me 17 questions. And I'll get to these from time to time and work all the way through them. But I'm going to just jump in here on question. I have a friend named Jimmy. And I went to Toastmasters with Jimmy many years ago. And Jimmy couldn't say questions. He always said questions. So I'm going to answer question number 12 here. He says, he starts with the sentence fragment. Debt forgiveness for current college loans? Good for the economy? Bad for personal responsibility? And then he says, is there a social obligation to us as a whole? I think that there should probably be a student loan jubilee. I think that student loans should probably at this point be forgiven. There are probably a bunch of boomers right now yelling about how they shouldn't have signed up for them and my personal responsibility and I paid mine back. It wouldn't be fair. All of that kind of shit. But I don't care. The truth of it is student loan debts can't be gotten away from. We can't file bankruptcy on them. I had a friend tell me one time, he's an attorney, and he told me that student loans, you used to be able to file bankruptcy against student loans, but you can't anymore. And he claimed that happened because young people were going to law school and then using their newfound legal expertise to file bankruptcy. And it was just a matter of course that you would go to law school, rack up student loans, and then they would immediately file bankruptcy on those things. And the American Bar Association wasn't interested in having a bunch of low-cost attorneys showing up on the scene who had lower overheads than other people were filing bankruptcy. So they, in knowing that, and this is just, I haven't researched this, but it jives, knowing that most lawmakers in our federal government are attorneys, it makes sense that might have come to pass, right? That we can't file bankruptcy on student loans. And student loans don't have collateral. They don't have collateral. You buy a car and somebody signs a bad loan on an automobile. You could sell that automobile, take the money from the sale and pay down your note and be left with a smaller balance. And, if you're upside down on it, you're going to have to bring a little cash to the table, but you can get away from that. You can't get away from the student loan. You just can't. And then if you buy a lemon, if the automobile you buy is a lemon, there are lemon laws in many states that give you recourse against the manufacturer and or the automobile dealer who sold you this faulty, crappy car. There's no lemon law for the education. So kids are often being sold an education that's just, it's a lemon. It doesn't work. It doesn't do what was represented. They aren't able to gain gainful employment as a result of it. They received no education or intellectual training, and so they got sold a lemon. The product they bought was misrepresented, or even if it was represented correctly, the institutions they bought those degrees from didn't deliver on them as they should have. But there's nowhere for them to go. So there's another reason why we should probably forgive those debts. Here's another one. These debts are entered into by very, very young people. Often 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds strike the deal with the university to go to that school, fill out their FAFSA, FAFSA, and obligate themselves to these unforgivable loans. Some of them before they're legal adults, and others right on the threshold of adulthood, right at just 18. The student loan industry and universities are the student loan industry and universities are taking advantage of them in many cases. The fact that usurers are taking advantage of the ignorance of very, very young people to write these loans mean that those usurers, that there should be a punishment meted out to the people who are lending the money to these young people. The student loans, so I think there should be a jubilee. Next, college endowment funds are growing virtually every year. They are at all-time highs. This isn't my idea. What follows isn't my idea. I have heard people recommend that that university endowments, that one, the lender needs to eat some of the loan because they made a bad loan to an ignorant borrower. An ignorant borrower, that's no slam against them. Often, like I said, these are 17, 18-year-old people, and it's just not right to hold them to the same standard that you would even a 23-year-old person. Because everyone in their lives, by the way, are telling them that they need to borrow the money to get this college education that's of spurious value. Their school teachers, their counselor, their aunt, their grandparents, their mom and dad are pressuring them to take on 6 figures in debt often. And that's just a horrible way to start out life. So I believe that I think the lenders need to eat some of this, probably something like half of this. And then I believe that the rest of it should be, I would see, if I were in charge, I would seize enough of the endowment funds of universities to pay off the remainder of that debt. Because these students are taking on this debt and the endowments of these universities are growing, it's pretty, and knowing that money is fungible, it's clear to me that by and by that the student loan debt has served to swell the endowments of these universities. Now, a bunch of boomers are listening to me right now saying, no, those endowments are growing because of donations from the alumni. Well, you're right, but if the funds weren't pouring in, the borrowed funds weren't pouring in from the students, the university could have spent the funds from the alumni to defray some of the costs for the students. The fact that the endowments are growing should help the price of tuition to go down, but it's not going down. And one of the reasons it isn't going down is because there is too much demand. Too many people are trying to go to university, and so they're able to command. And there's too much money chasing the university product. So there's upward pressure on those prices all the time, and it just gets higher and higher and higher. The more people borrow and spend on that, the more the prices go up, and then the more they must borrow, and then the more they go up. It's in a vicious cycle that drives the price up and up and up. It's a terrible drag on the economy. Young people, if they aren't saddled with debt, are in a perfect position to be starting businesses, and new business formation rates are dropping. Young people are often very, very innovative. Young people should be in positions to take risks that some older people cannot take. a young person who has no children and has very, very low expenses because they haven't been saddled with all of the mortgages and other things that we have to deal with, are in great positions to start businesses. I know friends. I personally know people who started businesses and slept in the back room at their business while they were getting it off the ground because they were low cost, they were quick and agile, they were young and hungry, and they had no debt. They didn't have to make money. All they needed was a place to sleep and a place to work, and then they could create and then eventually create jobs, create value where there was none. But if they absolutely have to be making payments on student loan debt, they can't have that time where they have a very, very low income as they put the sweat equity into their businesses. So these student loans are crushing. They're crushing the small business environment. Additionally, it's causing people to not get married. It's causing people to not be able to move out of their parents' homes. It's causing people to not have children. They can't afford it. They can't afford to have children because they're paying off their shitty loan for their shitty degree that their shitty family essentially forced them into through pressure. Like, nobody wants to disappoint their mother and their father and their teachers at school and their favorite aunt. Nobody wants to do that. It takes a very, very bold young person to defy them all and tell them that they're not willing to be saddled with that debt and to give these worthless universities 4 or 5 years of their life, of their best years of their life. It takes a very special young person to buck that social pressure from their loved ones and the people they respect. So it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable to expect that most young people would do that. They're being coerced. They're being coerced to take on this debt, and it's hurting us all. This guy says, is that bad for personal responsibility? I don't know, man. We all make mistakes when we're young. Is kicking the shit out of somebody for 10, 20, 30 years because they made a mistake when they're young good for personal responsibility? I don't think so. I don't think so. You should probably do forgiveness. We should probably harm the borrower's credit ratings. There needs to be some consequence, but these loans are coerced. They're coercive largely. The products offered are often fraudulent. And the loans were made to uninformed borrowers under high pressure circumstances. So in any other arena, home loans, personal debt consolidation, payday lending situations, automobile loans, in any other arena, this would be entirely unacceptable. But because it's young people and it's student loans, everybody gets indignant. Well, they shouldn't have done it. Education's worth it. My personal responsibility, etc. And I don't buy that crap. And then lastly, he asks, is there a social obligation to us as a whole? I don't know about a social obligation. I typically don't buy those arguments about social obligation. I'm not sure what that is. I don't know where I sign on the line to take on that thing, and I don't know how I can opt out. I'm not sure about that. But I'll tell you, I think it's hurting everyone. I think it's hurting everyone. And the money's there, the university endowments is essentially money that was transferred, again, because of the fungibility of money from these poor students who took on this almost lifetime obligation to pay back these debts. That money is there. In fact, it's to a great degree, it is their money. Some of these universities, like Harvard, for example, the proceeds from their endowment aren't enough to let them offer free tuition. I don't know that that's the right way to go, but But why not give this debt relief? I think that traditionally people have been against usury. Adam Smith railed on usury. Aquinas, Augustine, Aristotle didn't like it. Most of these gentlemen didn't like fiat currency even. There are biblical injunctions against usury. There are numerous examples of high-functioning societies offering jubilees, debt jubilees, where periodically debts were forgiven. And I think this would be a good thing for us to do. We all talk about the power of compounding interest and how $1 saved early is so powerful and is such a big help to us as we age, because that compounding power of interest works for us. Well, that very same compounding power of interest works against us to cripple us. And it doesn't take a lot of math to show that even fairly modest levels of debt can render someone unable to achieve financial independence. Companies that take on large amounts of debt, there are a number of them that are interesting to me. This has been happening for as long as I've observed. Companies like, WeWork, Peloton right now is in an IP initial public offering that's flopping. We can point to dozens and dozens of examples of companies that have crippling levels of debt, and it is impossible to have growth rates that outstrip the compounding interest payments that they must make. And it's a mathematical certainty that once the debt reaches a certain level, the lifetime earning power of an individual or a company cannot outstrip it. Money's not infinite. Time isn't infinite. People's lives are precious. Their freedom is precious. And these student loans are infringing on that. I think the student loans are unjust. I think that the dirty lenders, the dirty retailers, and everyone involved in that industry needs a haircut at this point. They need to reap the consequences of the bad loans they have made. And the sooner we do that, the happier we'll all be. I think there's some bad consequences from this that could be coming too. What if we created an entire generation of people who can never purchase a home or have a family, or at least are afraid they can't because of the student loan debt that they took on when they were 17 and a half, 18 and a half years old? What about that? What is that? What kind of society does that end up being? You think that's a peaceful? You think that's a peaceful society? Do you think that everyone? Do you think that if we had 40 million people saddled with unforgivable student loan debt will peacefully go into the night and just go work day in and day out, just bearing that debt like an anchor around their neck without any consequence? I don't think so. I think that this could potentially be a recipe for civil unrest. Hope not. I think it could be. We certainly don't want those kinds of conditions. Well, this is a longer podcast than I want to make normally. There's some off-the-cuff comments about student loan debt and student loan jubilee. If you guys have any questions that you'd like me to answer, or things you'd like me to talk about, or if you find typos on the website, email me at scott@scotthambrick.com and tell a friend about it, and we'll talk to you soon.